I pulled up the import data from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry this morning, and I honestly thought there was a decimal error. I refreshed the page. I checked the cross-reference from the customs reports, and the number didn't change. You are seeing a volume of physical silver moving into one specific geographic region right now that defies every bearish narrative on television. While the analysts on CNBC are arguing about whether the Fed cuts by 25 basis points or holds, there is a vacuum cleaner the size of a subcontinent turned on full blast, and it is sucking the London vaults dry. This isn't speculation. This is arithmetic. And it honestly frustrated me because I know most people are going to miss this until they go to buy an ounce and realize the premium has exploded. And I think you deserve the full story. So here it is. It is Sunday, February 18th, 2025, coming to you on Chicago time. Comment what day and date you're watching from because I'm always curious how far this travels and where you are in the cycle when you hit play. Quick thing, I'm running a campaign to eliminate copycat channels. If you value this breakdown and the work that goes into connecting these dots, support it by subscribing and commenting Follow the Metal below so the algorithm knows who the actual humans are. Here is the problem. The headlines and the experts are focused on the paper price of silver, which is set by algorithms in New York and London, trading theoretical ounces that don't exist. They are telling you that silver is weak because the dollar is strong or because yields are high. But the real story is that India is currently importing silver at a pace that is mathematically unsustainable for the rest of the world. They are taking delivery of thousands of tons, not paper contracts, but actual physical bars, which means the available float for Western investors and industries is shrinking rapidly. And you don't hear that part in the mainstream narrative because it doesn't fit the clean, tidy model where markets are efficient and supply is infinite. The market is not efficient. It is a physical system, and right now, the drain is open. I'm going to break down 3 things for you, and I'll keep it practical. First, I want to explain the vacuum effect and the sheer scale of what is leaving the LBMA vaults. Second, we need to talk about the shift from cultural buying to industrial hoarding and why this time is different. And third, I want to discuss the inevitable supply shock this creates for the Western markets. Before we get into the details, let me say something to newer people, or if you're just getting started. Don't let anybody shame you for asking basic questions. The global flow of metal is confusing. It involves customs duties, bonded warehouses, and arbitrage spreads. It is not as simple as checking the stock price of Apple. And for the experienced traders watching this, here's a retention trick. Whenever you see a price drop in New York but import numbers surge in the East, that is not a bear market. That is a wealth transfer. That is the East using the West's paper smash to buy the West's real assets at a discount. Let's start with the first major point, which is the vacuum effect. The principle here is that metal flows to where the money is treated best and where the demand is most urgent. Right now, that place is India. We are seeing import numbers that are breaking records. We are talking about thousands of tons in a single year. To give you context, the entire global mining production is somewhere around 800 million ounces. India alone is capable of swallowing a massive percentage of that. The mechanism works like this. The primary marketplace for physical silver wholesale is London, the LBMA. This is where the big 1,000-ounce bars live. When Indian demand spikes, bullion banks and chartered accountants in Mumbai and Gujarat place massive orders. These orders are filled by taking bars out of the London vaults, putting them on a plane or a ship, and sending them to India. Once that metal enters India, it crosses a duty wall. India has high import taxes on silver. Why does this matter? Because once you pay that 15 or so percent tax to get the metal into the country, you are not going to export it back out unless the price goes astronomically higher. That metal is effectively removed from the global circulating supply. It goes into a black hole. Recent reports show that the stockpiles in London are dropping. You can track this. The data is there if you dig for it. The float, the amount of metal that is actually available to be bought and sold by ETFs and futures contracts, is getting thinner. The hidden consequence is that the West is losing its buffer. We are used to having a massive stockpile in London that we can draw on whenever things get tight. But if that stockpile is relocated to private vaults in Chennai and industrial parks in Gujarat, it is gone. It is not coming back to bail out the Comex. The common mistake people make is thinking this is just seasonal. They say, oh, it's just wedding season, it's just the Diwali festival. That is the lazy analysis. Yes, culture matters, but what we are seeing now is consistent, year-round accumulation that ignores the seasonal charts. Now here's the skeptical alternative. Could India stop buying? Sure. If the price goes too high too fast, the Indian consumer is very price sensitive. They might pause, but they rarely sell. They just stop buying for a while, so the floor is in, even if the ceiling hasn't blown off yet. That brings us to the second thing, which is the shift from cultural jewelry to industrial necessity. This is the part that the financial media completely misses. They still think of India as a nation of farmers buying silver anklets for their wives. That is true, and it is a beautiful tradition that preserves wealth. But that is 1990s thinking. The mechanism today is the green grid expansion. India is building one of the largest solar energy infrastructures in the world. They are building gigafactories for photovoltaics. They are pushing into electronics manufacturing to compete with China. What does all of that require? Silver. Lots of it. And unlike the farmer who buys an anklet and might melt it down in a crisis, the industrialist consumes the silver. It gets turned into a paste, printed onto a solar panel, and bolted to a roof for 25 years. That silver is gone. It is destroyed in terms of market availability. Current industry updates indicate that a significant chunk of these record imports is entering through special economic zones and ports designated for industrial use. This isn't going to the bazaars, it's going to the factories. The hidden consequence is that this demand is inelastic. A jewelry buyer can walk away if the price is too high. A solar panel factory cannot. If they have orders to fill, they must buy the silver at any price. This puts a relentless bid under the market that did not exist 10 years ago. The common misconception is that silver is just a poor man's gold. In India right now, silver is a strategic industrial material. The government knows this. The businesses know this. They are securing supply now because they see the same deficit charts we do. They are front-running the shortage. Now let me be blunt about the mistake most Westerners make. We look at the world through a dollar-centric lens. We think if the Fed raises rates, silver must go down. But if you are an Indian infrastructure planner, you don't care about the Fed's dot plot. You care about whether you have the raw materials to keep your factory running. The motivation is completely different. That brings us to the third thing, which is the inevitable supply shock for the West. We need to talk about what happens when the supermarket runs out of milk because one customer bought the entire truck. The principle is simple. Arbitrage closes gaps. Right now, the price of silver in India is trading at a premium to the international spot price. That premium covers the shipping, the insurance, and the import duties. As long as that premium exists, metal will flow from west to east. It is a one-way street. The mechanism that protects the Comex and the Western pricing scheme is the availability of inventory in London. If the Comex gets squeezed, they can usually source bars from London to settle the contracts. But if India has already bought those bars, where does the Comex go? They have to go to the miners. But the miners are already sold out. They have to go to the refiners. But we already talked about the refinery backlogs. What we're seeing right now is a situation where the Western markets are pricing silver as if it is abundant, while the Eastern markets are pricing it as if it is scarce. Eventually, this breaks. The hidden consequence is that the spot price we see on our screens in New York will become irrelevant. If you want metal, you will have to pay the East price, not the paper price. We are already seeing this in the premiums for American silver eagles and other sovereign coins. The mints can't get the planches because the raw silver is being diverted. Here's a question for you. Which do you think is a stronger driver of price? A hedge fund manager shorting a futures contract on leverage, or a developing nation buying physical metal to build its energy grid? Drop that in the comments because I read them and I want to know who you think wins that arm wrestling match. Now here is the skeptical alternative. I want to be fair. Could the West just outbid India? Yes. If the price goes high enough, the flow reverses. If silver hits $50 or $100, maybe the Indian industrial demand softens and the flow turns back to New York. But think about what that implies. It implies the price has to go to $50 or $100 to stop the bleeding. That is the bull case right there. Now let me give you the uncomfortable scenario. This is the part that keeps dealers up at night. Imagine a scenario where the Indian government decides that silver is a strategic asset and changes the export rules or changes the import duty suddenly to encourage even more accumulation. Or imagine the London vaults reach a critical level of depletion, what they call technical default territory. The Comex could declare a force majeure. They could settle your contracts in cash. You bet on silver, you were right, but you get dollars back. Meanwhile, the physical metal is sitting in a vault in Mumbai, and you can't touch it. The East owns the asset. The West owns the paper claim that just got canceled. That is the uncomfortable reality of counterparty risk. Here's the twist. There is a world where India becomes the price setter. For the last 50 years, New York and London have set the price of gold and silver. But if the physical gravity shifts enough, the pricing power shifts too. We might wake up one day and realize that the Comex price is just a local reference rate, like a regional weather report, while the real global price is set on the MIC-X in India or the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And that price will be much higher. Both markets can exist, but the spread between them will blow out. So, what do you actually do with this information? If you are a stacker, this confirms your thesis, but it changes your strategy. You need to stop waiting for the big crash to back up the truck. If India is buying the dip might not go as deep as you think. Focus on low premium weight. India buys 1,000-ounce bars and kilo bars. They don't buy MS-70 graded slabbed coins. Follow the smart money. Buy the cheapest ounces you can find. If you are a collector, understand that this flow doesn't directly impact your rare coins yet, but it puts a floor under the melt value. It adds a layer of safety to your hobby. For the traders, watch the arbitrage. Watch the premium on the Shanghai and Indian exchanges relative to spot. When that spread widens, it means the physical suck is intensifying. That is your signal that the paper shorts are trapping themselves. Here is a simple approach. 1. Watch the import data releases from India. They come out monthly. 2. Watch the Lima Vault Holdings reports. If imports go up and vault holdings go down, you hold your position. 3. Do not try to time the exact bottom. You are competing with a nation state that is price insensitive on the way down. So here's what we covered. The volume of silver moving into India is historic, and it is draining the Western vaults. This is driven by a structural shift from simple jewelry demand to critical solar and industrial infrastructure. And this creates a vacuum effect that will eventually force the Western paper markets to re-rate higher or face a physical default. The metal is leaving the system, and it is crossing a border that it doesn't come back from. Stay alert. Don't let the flat price action fool you. The river is flowing fast underneath the surface. Now, here are my questions for you. Do you think the Western markets will wake up to this supply drain before or after the vaults run dry? And do you trust the official inventory numbers coming out of London? Drop your answer below and remember to include what day and date you're watching from. If you want to support this channel and keep this campaign strong against the copycats, subscribe right now and comment, "Follow the metal." And if this helped you, share it with someone who thinks silver is just a dead rock. All right, take care of yourself, stay sharp, keep your head clear, and I'll talk to you soon. And just so we're crystal clear, this is educational commentary. It's my take, based on publicly discussed information and my own reasoning. And it's not personal financial advice. I'm not your advisor. I don't know your goals or your risk tolerance, and I could be wrong. You make your own decisions and you own the outcomes. Do your own homework. Consider your situation. And only take risks you can actually live with.